Hello everyone, my name is Eleni Mata.
My name is Tara Mahosa.
And my name is Diego Lopez. Welcome to Political Access Connection, where we make politics interesting for you.
Today we have two awesome stories about Hispanic voters and of course Trump and a special guest. But first, the top things to know for this week. These are just the top trending stories that we read about this morning and we felt you should really know about. So the first one is Hillary in the Benghazi trial where she was interrogated for 11 hours straight.
Yep, and supposedly she did really well. That's what people are saying.
Yeah, and she received, what the word was is that she has received the most money in her campaign ever after that trial.
Huh.
And especially following her fantastic concert with Katy Perry hosting it and grabbing a lot more money. Hillary's been doing a really good job really racking up these celebrities to really be part of her campaign and getting all this money. What do you...
Bernie Sanders has been kind of doing that too. I just noticed that John Waters endorsed him, Mark Ruffalo has, and there's been a handful of others as well. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting that this Benghazi trial went so well for her. I think that's a really good step, at least for her. Especially because I'm sure it was pretty nerve-wracking going in because she had so many people attacking her for so long that...
Well, especially in the Democratic debate, I know Anderson Cooper brought up the question, would you say anything to have people vote for you? Because at first she was completely against the Pacific Trade Agreement.
And a lot of things, her entire history is just
for,
all things
yeah,
she's
she
been
was
flip-flopping
for,
on.
She was for it, and now she's against it. And the way that she kind of responded to it was, well, you receive more information as you go along, and of course your mind is going to change for it. What do you think about that? Of course your mind is going to change whatever new information, but do you really believe her when she says, do you find her trustworthy at all?
That she always has really strong opinions in the beginning, and if you didn't have all that information to have a strong opinion then I don't believe that you have the information to know it now.
I also feel like she definitely will say whatever she wants to get votes. For example, take the gay marriage thing. She flipped on that. And recently she's been kind of lining herself up to be more of the things that Bernie Sanders are saying that people go crazy for. So I feel like one of the reasons why I personally have never been a huge fan of hers because of the fact that she flip-flops so much, she just comes off as unreliable. And even if she does change her opinions over time, which she made is a good point, that's true, and that makes people feel like you are unreliable. So.
Yeah. And speaking of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden came out to the Rose Garden to tell us that he's not running for president. And I actually think we kind of suspected that by the death of his son.
Right. And the fact that he wasn't, even present at the debate either was probably a pretty huge blow for him too, because I think that debate helped a lot of people, especially Bernie Sanders and O'Malley, out a lot. So.
Yes, and speaking of O'Malley, he is left in the race. So it's Sanders, it's Clinton, and now it's O'Malley.
Yep.
Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee is now
done. Yeah. They're the weaker ones anyways, especially Chafee. He was always the way bottom, and he just...
But he seems so happy to be there.
Yeah, that's the thing about Chafee. He was a really nice guy, and I think nobody doubted that. And I've even read interviews from people who worked with him when he was the governor of Rhode Island, saying he was always super interested in people's personal lives, and he was a really sweet guy. But was he qualified to be president? I think that's where people had the problem.
But I think I was really glad about the Democratic debate anyway, because people got to see the three other candidates that are going against Sanders and Clinton, and we only saw both of them. And to some people, they're really two opposite ends of the spectrum here.
Right.
And finally, we get to see there are other options. Not as many as the Republicans have, but there are options.
But that's good for us, though, that we have fewer options, because the more options you have, the more divided your party becomes, and then it's harder to have a lot of support for one person once you get to the primary or past the primaries.
So there's your helping of packed news for your week. When we get back, we'll get an exclusive look on Trump's rally in Massachusetts.
Welcome back to Political Access Connection. Despite being a Democratic state, Donald Trump took to Massachusetts, where many of his supporters welcomed him at the Tyngsboro Elementary School. Reporter Shauna Newcomb has the story.
Who says a Republican can't win over a blue state? Donald Trump is trying one voter, one signature at a time, starting here in the small town of Tyngsboro, Massachusetts.
I love Massachusetts. I love it. Why do they always say that a Republican can't win Massachusetts. I think we can. You know why? I think the Democrats are so sick and tired of watching our country lose that they're going to vote for the Republican if this is the one. I really believe it.
Right now, I am standing on the platform that the Republican candidate for the 2016 upcoming presidential election, Donald Trump, just stood on when he delivered to 4,000 people his stance on immigration and foreign policy.
His stance on immigration, I tend to agree with a lot. They're illegal immigrants. They're here illegally. You can't deport 11 million people from the country, but the ones that are here and that are committing crimes and that have prior records should be deported.
I believe we should build the wall. I think that it's important for people to go through the system legally, and we have to do it the right way.
Many spectators actually left during the rally in reaction to Trump's anchor baby comment.
How can somebody coming in illegally, lying down, having a baby, congratulations, citizen?
Despite the controversy in regards to that statement, Trump remains optimistic with Massachusetts voters.
Something incredible and something beautiful is happening. Things are going on in Massachusetts. You're going to have people voting for me that never voted for a Republican before.
After posing for some photos and making his way through the rowdy crowd, Trump was off to his next campaign stop. For Studio 73, I'm Shauna Newcomb.
Although Donald Trump is currently leading in the polls, it is too early to tell at this point who will become the Republican Party's nomination. Be sure to vote for your favorite nominee at the upcoming primary election. To register to vote online, visit the Secretary of the Commonwealth website at www.sec.state.ma.
I gotta tell you guys, the rally on Friday was really interesting to see in person. I mean, it's cool to see from a different perspective an opposite party and what they think about it, especially the supporters. And it was definitely really crazy, but it's cool to see it in person about a party that you don't normally follow and see how their rallies is in comparison to the Democratic
Did you go to
Party.
the Bernie Sanders one here?
I did.
You
And
did?
it was so exciting. A lot of college students were there.
Yeah, that's good and that's bad.
Yeah, how so?
How's it bad? Because
Yeah.
college students never vote.
Well, I think Bernie can do a really good job trying to mobilize students to register to vote and then actually go vote, because there's the difference of I'm going to register and then, well, do I really want to stay in line for about 30 to 40 minutes to actually just write on the ballot? But I think he can do a really good job mobilizing students, whereas it was kind of different with Trump. There weren't a lot of students there. Mostly the older crowd was there, and I mean, it was exciting. He's definitely an exciting person to listen to, but I have to say there was definitely a crowd of people he definitely missed, especially with the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. I wanted to bring to light the Hispanic student voters. Hispanic voters are definitely considered one of the most important groups for this election because, let's face it, the minority is becoming the majority. So let's take a look at what students said.
Trump is definitely leading the polls, but there is a whole group of voters that he needs to pay attention to if he wants to win. When he came to visit in Tyngsboro, Massachusetts, he made a lot of comments regarding immigration and how the United States were handling it.
People are being born on our soil, and congratulations, folks, we're now taking care of them for 85 years. We can't be so stupid that this is possible.
As supporters reacted to Trump with excitement there, Hispanic student voters here gave what they thought about Trump's comments.
What he's doing is he knows that a lot of people are xenophobic or hateful in some way, and I think he's using that knowledge to gain a lot of support because he's saying things that nobody else would say.
You can't really judge someone unless you know their story, unless you've been in their shoes. And I wonder, if maybe he was born into Hispanic culture, if his mom was Hispanic and his dad was American, I wonder what he would think then.
With us, we have Spanish Professor Iani Moreno. She is the Associate Professor of Spanish and Latin American Studies in the Department of World Languages and Cultural Studies here at Suffolk University. Welcome, Professor Moreno. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So Trump has definitely been making comments on immigration and not positive ones. So tell me, in your perspective, what are your reactions to what he's saying?
I was really very angry when I heard the comment that he was talking about Mexicans and them being rapists and just coming in here to take advantage of the United States, and then a few people he guessed would be good. And then the way he said it, I think it stirred more hatred, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what Hispanics are doing here in the United States, the immigrants and the people that are born here in the United States. I think in general, if you go to the different immigration neighborhoods around here, there's less crime in those places, and people are hardworking, people that have come here, and they're really not creating many problems. Very few are the ones that are the troublemakers. And yes, there are some, of course, that are rapists and that are thieves, and
But not all. But the rapists and thieves aren't all Hispanic. So I mean, we talked about this earlier. He's really generalizing this whole Hispanic population, and I mean, we're not the ones to blame for that. But also, just to go back to your earlier point, Diego and I were talking about how Hispanics come here and they're professionals. They're not the one. They're not incarcerated. They are not here purposely to cause trouble. I mean, your father's a doctor.
My father's doctor, and he came as an immigrant, as already a medical professional to the United States. He didn't come by getting married or something like that. It was just totally based off of that.
same here. My father also came he was a financial analyst and worked for the World Bank, and that's how we moved here. So we were just hardworking. He was a hardworking professional, and all my sisters and I, we've been to college, but he seems to be just focusing on the lowest of the low and the small percentage. And then, as you said, yes, every race will have bad apples, but for some reason he's just focusing on that, and I think that's what really stirred the Hispanic community. And then that's when you saw Univision getting really angry at him, and then was it Miss Universe or Miss USA?
Oh, the Miss USA.
USA, yeah, that's right.
And also when he kicked out Jorge Ramos from
from the press conference?
Right.
Yeah, and then the way he said to him, he said, go back to Univision, but it meant really go back to Mexico.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's Mexican, and the way he treated him, you could just see, it's just, because he's so well known. Maybe he's not well known for other people that don't speak Spanish.
But he's a very respected anchor. I mean, I grew up watching him in Univision. So I think that really became a catalyst of, who does this guy think he is?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So what does this mean for Hispanic voters, or just immigrant voters in general? I mean, the primary is coming up March 2nd, March 3rd, Super Tuesday, and people are considering, who exactly am I going to vote for, even if they are because Hispanics can be Republican. So what are they thinking about, and what should this mean for us?
Well, I haven't seen the polls, but I would imagine that a lot of the Hispanic voters will not be voting for Trump. I would imagine, because last election, it cost the Republicans dearly because they really did not focus on the Hispanic community. And again, they had the same kind of rhetoric, I think. And so to have him be like the face of the Republican Party is not sitting well with the big cities where you have great majorities or minorities that are Hispanics.
So what would this, I'm sorry, did you want to?
Well, I was just going to say that one that a lot of Hispanic people, if they're conservative, might be looking more towards, and actually I know conservative Hispanic people who are voting for this person, is Marco Rubio, who's of Cuban descent, and he's actually fairly popular among the conservative Hispanic voting base, especially in Florida, where there's a lot of Cubans and they tend to vote more conservatively.
What do you think of Marco Rubio? I mean,
he's at least get more information in there, that because his family, they were immigrants. I think his parents came from Cuba, and then maybe his father was a janitor or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And then he has worked really hard, but he sees the Cuban community as a community of immigrants, and he knows that what Trump is saying is not true, and that you can become whatever you want to in this country because it's a country of opportunities. And he sees that in Miami, which is a place where all these Hispanic, there's a great
it's a Hispanic majority.
Yeah.
Especially in Boston, they're calling it a majority city. where the minority is really taking over the majority of the population.
Well, almost every big city is like that now in the U.S.
Exactly. So I mean, but that's why it's important for election day. I mean, it's the Hispanic population is worth paying attention to, and I feel like that he really needs to focus on that group of people. Otherwise, he's not going to go. He's not going to pass the primary.
Well, I think we are the biggest minority group in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, we are now.
Yeah.
I think there's about 2 million Hispanics in the United States. So that is just the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world, other than Mexico. Because Mexico's got like 120 million is the population. So we're really strong. And then also the purchasing power of Hispanics is, tremendous. And I think that's another reason why you can't just ignore us as a bloc. And yes, I think we are now the biggest minority.
I mean,
probably 20%, right?
I thought I started like 17.5. It's close to 20. Yeah.
So then, what should we? I mean, in your perspective, what should we as student voters do? I mean, of course, we should pay attention to the facts here. But if somebody is constantly attacking one group of people, and not only Hispanics are being upset about it, I mean, are we not speaking out enough? Or are we just not? Are we just being ignored? I mean, what should we do other than go out and vote?
I think that's the best thing to do, to go out and vote. It's so that they know that our vote counts. Last election, they had some people that they invited here at Suffolk University, some speakers that came, and we were this is just right before the elections, and Michael Dukakis was there, and then they had like a representative of the Republican Party, and then they had the pollster that works here.
David Paleologos?
Yes, so he was there. So I asked him, I said, in your speech, you didn't mention Hispanics as being able to make the big change for the elections. And I told him, I think you need to be looking at the Hispanics because we're a really strong bloc. And he said it didn't seem like we would in any way change the election. And it was really close, and they didn't know who was going to win. And I told him, I said, I still think you should. And then I went and talked to the guy, the Republican guy, because I was like, I have to tell you, hey, here I am. Why are you always talking like so, like making Hispanics like, it's like this stereotype. And I'm like, here I am. I'm a college professor. I have a PhD. Win me over. What are you going to say to me? And then he was like, that's something we have to work on. We haven't really done anything, pretty much. Maybe for the next election we'll do it. And here we are. And they look at what's happening. So I see 4 years later, almost 4 years later, nothing has happened.
Well, I think one of the problems is, and I read something about this somewhere, that a lot of Hispanics, though we are a big part of this country, a lot of them don't vote, either because they only have like a green card and they don't have like the full citizenship status, or they're not engaged enough in politics. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why they feel like they can't ignore them. Because even though we are a big chunk of the population, we're not necessarily the most politically active by any stretch.
Right, but I know there was a campaign a couple of years ago, and they put billboards in Hispanic communities telling them not to vote. I mean, to make sort of this statement like, well, if you don't want to account for us, then we just won't vote for you, so you can understand how big our impact is. And it does stink. I mean, there's that language barrier as well. I mean, if they don't add translations onto the census that they send over, and of course any of the translations for the referendum, and like any questions onto the ballot if you want like to change a certain bill, like for the casino or for, let's say, the legalization of marijuana, if they don't add those translations, and this is for anybody whose English is not their first language, you're going to hit that gap of people who aren't going to want to be engaged. So, do you have any final statements for us?
I just think that you need to also do your research and try to hit Trump with other information that he's using, like for example how he says he's going to be able to build a wall, like the border, and just kind of like do your research, see, like the US and Mexico border is about close to 2,000 miles. And then right now I can tell you, according to my research that I have done and I have published in my book, they've only built probably close to 700 miles. And so how can if they've only built 700 miles, how can you really do the rest? I mean, do the math. You can't.
Well, he claims Mexico is going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Is what he's saying. So we're not going to have to do the math. Is what
Yeah, but it's impossible. You cannot do that. That's I think one of the major things. If you do look up the information, how much does it take to build even like 1 mile of the border? How many millions and millions of dollars? So then how much is it going to take to maintain? How much personnel you will need? Those are some of the things that I wanted to know. How expensive is it? And these people are still, some of them crossing the border because of the need. But now less people are crossing actually than before. But I think that's, one of the things that you can, use this information against him, And then the same thing, if you have 11 million people here that are here illegally, he can't just deport all of them.
No.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Moreno.
Thank you
If
so
you
much.
want more information on Professor Moreno and her book, check out her book, what's it called? Theater of the Borderlands, Conflict, Violence, and Healing. Thank you for joining us for this segment of Political Access Connection.